Christoph, we have to start in the German capital where you went to see your beloved VfL Bochum. Usually people, well, often people at the Olympic Stadium are in danger of getting bored to death, but you had another very perilous experience. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I had some kind of near-death experience because Bochum, as you said, my beloved team, was 1-0 down at Hertha, the bottom team of the Bundesliga. Hertha desperate needed a win to at least have a theoretical chance of staying in the Bundesliga, and the stadium was almost packed, 71,000 there. Hertha fans excited, an enormous Bochum crowd supporting the away team. I mean, for Bochum standard, it's a pretty small team. There were over 10,000 people that had took the trip to Berlin, and Hertha was 1-0 up after about an hour when Lucas Toussaint headed in a corner. And after this, Bochum desperately tried to get the equalizer, and they got it in the 94th minute. And that was one of the moments where I was wondering if someday I will simply pass away in a football stadium in situations like this. And I
It'd be a lovely way to go. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah. And I don't know. Probably. I mean, it's too morbid to.
As long as you don't interrupt the game, it's fine.
Yeah, so probably towards the end of the game, enormous victory, big points, great equalizer, winning goal or whatever, and then bye world.
Well, I mean, yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a slight veering off on a tangent, but recently Mrs. Honigstein asked me if I could repeat anything of my life, what would it be? And I thought about it for a minute and said, I don't know, probably something football related. She did not like that answer.
Okay, so
in life as in death, we seem to be slightly obsessed with this game.
Yeah, probably you would try to rewind the 99 Champions League final in Barcelona. That would be a guess I have. For me,
if you can change the outcome, yes.
Yeah. So let's try it again. Stop here and then start again. So and this draw was for Bochum, the equalizer by Kevin Schlotterbeck, who only came in to replace Ayhan Mazovic, a central defender, because he was injured. And but Kevin Schlotterbeck, who is on loan from Freiburg, came on to replace him. But he not only hit the post short before time, but he also scored the equalizer. And he was saying something very nice. He said his heartbeat was over 200 then, and it was for him, it was the biggest moment in his footballing career since being promoted with Baling from the, I think, 6th level of German football to the 5th, or from the 5th to the 4th. And so yeah, a great moment for Bochum, a shock moment in the arena in Gelsenkirchen, where Schalke managed to get a draw, a 2-2 draw against Eintracht Frankfurt. So if Bochum would have lost at the Olympiastadion, Schalke with that 2-2 draw against Frankfurt would have jumped one place from 17 to 16. And as we know, that makes a huge difference because the 7th and 18th team in the Bundesliga go down straight, and the 3rd from the bottom will have the chance to, with 2 relegation games against the 3rd of the Bundesliga, that is either Heidenheim or the mighty HSV Hamburg. And yeah, but before we go into this, what it all means and who else is involved in the relegation fight, maybe we should have a word for Hertha, because that I think it was also a near-death experience for many Hertha supporters, because that equalizer meant that Hertha is going down. For the 11th time in their history, they will leave the Bundesliga to the second division and will have a hard time.
They will have a hard time because they have financial problems, and of course a new setup with the 777 partners coming in. It'll be difficult for them to come back. We talked about the rumors about their problems obtaining a license from the German league to continue. And there's a big gap in the finances, apparently. That gap won't be smaller, made smaller by going down with the TV money. I think it's less than a third that you get, more or less.
Yeah, and
which
also
is not a lot.
Yeah, and also with match day revenues and sponsorship and so on and so on. So you lose a lot of money, and still it's in doubt if Hertha will get the license. So everything is very gloomy around Hertha,
Bleak.
right? Oh, bleak. Everything is very bleak around Hertha right now. And but let's see what happens in the weeks to come. It's a bit of a shame because Hertha showed this season how big as a club they are. They set a record this season with their highest ever attendance in the Bundesliga, and so I think we should keep our fingers crossed that they survive this terrible situation.
You think it's that bad?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, and I think everybody will do everything they can, and that includes the DFL, the German Football League, to keep Hertha, because as I said, it's a huge club with a huge following, and it will take an enormous effort to save them.
All right. Well, Schalke, you mentioned briefly, they played out a 2-2 draw against Frankfurt, which might yet be enough to save themselves or not. We don't know until next week. They are still in a relegation spot in 17th, but with just 1 point behind Bochum and Stuttgart, they can still survive. What did you make of their performance on Saturday?
Schalke showed what they have shown, especially in the second half of the season. This enormous resilience, always coming back from. I mean, they started fantastic. They went 1-0 up after 50 seconds, so it was interesting, and they already had scored before the kickoff in Berlin started. So the news came that they were 1-0 up when they before Bochum again in Berlin had begun. But then they were 1-2 down, and Frankfurt were the better team and so on. But 5 minutes from time, they managed to score the equalizer by Sebastian Polter, and now. Yeah, I think there will be thousands and thousands of Schalke fans heading to Leipzig next Saturday, and they have to get 1 point more than Frankfurt. Excuse me. They have to get 1 point more than Stuttgart or Bochum to jump one place. I mean, it's pretty difficult. We will talk about Leipzig later on. They look very much in form, and But also, I think we need to talk a bit about Stuttgart, because they had a fantastic 4-1 away win on Sunday at Mainz, who are a bit out of form. I think we can say that, with 4 defeats in a row now. Sind's 4? Ich glaube ja, ne? Hat einer von euch die Liste?
Mainz. Termine. Mainz 1-4-0-3-2-3. Yeah, 4 in a row.
Yeah.
Since beating Bayern. Haha, typical.
Yeah. Yeah, so these 4 defeats after their famous win against Bayern.
How many times does that happen?
And why is it happening? Do you have a theory?
No, but we have the explanation maybe that teams, they try extra hard and then they win and then they celebrate, and then the next 2 games they're too tired or can't quite raise their game anymore. But maybe it's just as the famous saying goes, since I found out about confirmation bias, I see it all the time. Maybe this is just a mistaken impression that this happened very often, but it does seem to be the case.
Okay, so but that helps. I mean, I think we talked about Stuttgart as one of the probably the most unlucky team in the Bundesliga when you compare their performance with their results, and being a much better team than the table tells. And it looks as if they are able to at least change this towards the end of the season, and I'm almost sure that they will stay in the Bundesliga and win their last match. They play at home against Hoffenheim, and Hoffenheim themselves managed to be safe with a tremendous 4-2 win against Union Berlin. So yeah, the situation, but there are still a lot of teams involved. Also, we talk later on about Dortmund and Augsburg, but Augsburg losing to Dortmund means they are also in this lottery. They
can't go down directly anymore.
But they can go to the relegation place.
Playoff spot, yes.
Yes.
I mean, they can still go down directly anymore if Schalke score 15 goals in the next game.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is when you look at the calendar of the last match day, next Saturday, there is none of the games where nothing is at stake. And that is probably the biggest last a day of the season in the history of the Bundesliga. I at least, I mean, we haven't been digging deep in the archives as maybe in the season 67, 68 or something
Oh yeah,
similar.
that one. Yeah.
So, something similar.
I remember it well.
But when were you born? Okay.
Later.
So yeah, but probably we should climb up
yes,
the ladder a bit.
A bit like Stuttgart. Let's climb up the ladder. But let's leave out Augsburg for the moment, because we'll talk about them in the context of the title race, of course. Let's briefly look at our friends from Hoffenheim. Well, that also takes us to the top of the table. Okay, as far as mid-table-ish, as far as a genuine mid-table game is concerned, I think we can briefly talk about Werder Bremen against 1. FC Köln. Bremen on a bit of a disappointing run in recent weeks. Not really following through on that good start they had under Ole Werner. And Köln, well, I think for them to be in mid-table is a huge success, so we shouldn't really be negative about them. They played a 1-1 draw, but it was very, very exciting.
Yeah, and I think Werder was very nervous before that, because I mean our how we saw it from afar, they were always kind of safe, and but they didn't feel that themselves, because 2 years ago when they went down, they had this horrible run towards the end of the season, when they didn't manage to get a single point, and eventually went down, and so this I think in most of the minds of the Werder Bremen supporters, there was something like, oh, this could happen again. And as you said, they are, when we look at the Rückrundentabelle, so the table of the second half of the season, they're only a second from the bottom. So their performance in the second half of the season dramatically declined. And so this 1-1 draw was very important for them, and maybe a bit lucky, but who cares? And now they surely be playing in the Bundesliga next season. They have the so far top scorer of the Bundesliga, Niklas Füllkrug, who so far scored 16 goals, and there seems to be a big chance that he at least stays another season. So let's see what's happening with Werder. And again, for Cologne, I think we can only have praise for their season, and very impressive what Steffen Baumgart made out of very limited means.
Yeah, an amazing atmosphere also in the Weserstadion, I think we should mention. Both from the Köln fans, the visiting fans, but also from the home side. A genuine football Bundesliga heavyweight contest, and at least as far as the fan base is concerned. Werder Bremen against Köln, none of them really in the mix for higher honors in the last few years, but we're very happy that they're in the league. I think we can all agree on that. Okay, another game in that region, although we're getting it slightly higher, slightly more European as we move along, as we move up the table, was Leverkusen's home game against Borussia Mönchengladbach. Leverkusen, as you know, probably mentally scarred from that game against Roma, with very little football played. They had a chance to at least play a bit of football with a team that, even if they tried, I'm sure couldn't be as defensive and pragmatic as Jose Mourinho's side were. That was, of course, Gladbach under Daniel Farke. They themselves are not having a great season. Leverkusen with a chance to make some ground up on Wolfsburg, and they took a 2-0 lead inside 20 minutes. And then, Christoph, the old Leverkusen reflexes came back. Or is that slightly simplistic?
At least they made bizarre errors. Let's put it like this. Especially the equalizer for Borussia Mönchengladbach. I think you should look it up in the internet. Whoever did not see it, because it was in a way so funny. So Marcus Thuram didn't get a pass, and then he ran into the goal of Leverkusen, holding the net, looking angrily towards the stand, and then was slowly walking away towards the pitch, and was standing around in the penalty box. And all of a sudden, Nadim Amiri, the Leverkusen midfielder, who got a bit under pressure from Borussia Mönchengladbach players, and then he passed the ball back to where he was thinking goalkeeper Radetzky was, but but Marcus Thuram was in front of him, and so he could easily pass the ball 2 meters to Lars Stindl, and he scored the equalizer. So yeah, it was a Christmas present in spring or early summer, and it was probably one of the funniest goal that we could see this season. And
and that was the last minute of the game, we should say, and that was the equalizer.
Yeah, and it was
not great timing.
Not great timing. It's true. Leverkusen looked happy that they hadn't to play against another Rome type team. You said it, they were 2-0 up, played well, fluid, and Leverkusen-like. So the positive side of being Leverkusen-like. But then I don't know what it was. Probably they got tired, lack of concentration. But then in the end, they gave the game away, or at least they gave the win away. So yeah, that leads to the situation that next Saturday they have to win at Bochum, because if they want to qualify for the Europa League, because at the same time the other contender, Wolfsburg, plays Hertha at home, and I think it's almost sure that they will win it.
Kurze Frage, wenn Leipzig gewinnt den Pokal,
dann rutscht der 7. runter. Also der 7. wird dann auch noch Europa League spielen.
Der 7. ist dann aber Conference League und 6. und 5. spielen Europa League, richtig?
Genau, ja.
Okay. I mean, that point from Leverkusen did help them leapfrog VfL Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg side that lost already on Friday night 2-0 against Champions League place chasing SC Freiburg. Freiburg with a big win and with a very, very romantic story. Niels Petersen, one of the old school players in the Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2, we should say, played his last game at home. He started and he scored 2 goals. And he cried.
Er wurde
he came on. Ja, genau.
Ja, wie er ja immer eingewechselt wird.
Ja, okay. Niels Petersen, der ist der erfolgreichste Einwechselspieler, richtig?
Mhm.
Aber die Zahlen genau weißt du jetzt nicht.
Nee, ich glaube über 30 Tore oder sowas.
Okay, lass mich mal ganz kurz nachschauen.
Der hat 104 Tore geschossen, aber
Gar nicht so leicht, das zu finden.
Das 34. Bundesligator nach Einwechslung war sein 2:0. Wenn euch das hilft.
Cool, ja, das hilft. Ja. Und wie viele Tore hat er insgesamt geschossen?
ich glaube 104, wenn ich das richtig nenne. Birgit, geht ihr? Lässt du mir noch eine Zigarette da?
Das ist sehr ungesund, Christoph. Lass das lieber.
Mit dem Rat hättest du mal vor 50 Jahren kommen sollen.
Hättest du auch nicht auf mich gehört, wahrscheinlich. Also. Der hat 89 Tore in der ersten Liga geschossen und 60 in der zweiten. Macht summa summarum 149.
149, ja.
Okay, gut. So. A very romantic story, Christoph, in Freiburg on Friday night. Niels Petersen, the most successful substitute forward in the history of the Bundesliga, combined Bundesliga 1 and 2. The German Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, if you will, was brought on in his final home game because he will retire at the end of the season. It was 0-0. And what did he do? He scored 2 goals. It was almost too romantic, too schmaltzy. But Christian Streich cried. Everyone was on their feet. And it wasn't just about him scoring his 149th goal in Bundesliga 1 and 2 combined, but also a real big 3 points for Freiburg in the fight for the Champions League. They're still in 5th, but now with a really big chance in making 4th because Union Berlin are now level with them and just ahead by 4 goals.
But let me say one thing about Niels Petersen. The Freiburg supporters were hanging out a banner when he came on saying, nobody is bigger than the club, but you came damn close. And I think that's,
nice.
that was very nice because Niels Petersen is not only, as you said, a prolific goal scorer. He also was very important for the team, and that a player like him accepted for such a long time, like it's almost 3 seasons now, maybe longer, that he is more or less the guy who is coming in. Although he is one of the leaders of this Freiburg teams, tells something about him, and also he very often gave nice interviews, had a very how can I say that, clear perspective of what professional football is. So sometimes, so for example, he was saying that he sometimes was thinking that he gets dumped by playing professional football because it's because of the lack of intellectual stimulation and so on. But he wasn't an outsider or something like that. He was very much a leader of his team, as I already said, and so at Freiburg everybody loves him, and I think will love him also in the years to come. Christian Streich, Freiburg's coach, they will stay in touch forever, or as long as they are there. And yeah, it's the end, or almost the end, of a very nice story. Next week probably Niels Petersen comes on again in Frankfurt, and maybe there is the final chapter of his romantic Freiburg story with another goal.
Yeah, well, not so romantic a story for Union Berlin. They traveled to TSG Hoffenheim. Union Berlin, you remember, had the Champions League anthem ringing out in their dressing room after the win last week. They had the fans riffing on the Champions League, but the script didn't go. Yeah, but it didn't go according to script because they lost 4-2 at Hoffenheim. And it was one of those Union performances away from home that we have seen sometime, usually so organized, so hard to play against. But when they do get a bad game, things kind of open up very quickly for the opposition. Is it because the man marking, when it doesn't quite work, then it leaves huge gaps? I don't know what the real reason was, but certainly they lost 4-2, and now Champions League qualification is in danger again.
Yeah, it is in danger, but next week they have a home game against Werder Bremen. And as we said, Freiburg at the same time is playing in Frankfurt, and Freiburg has to get more points from their game than Union. So either Union has to lose at home against Werder and Freiburg get a point at the same time, or Freiburg winning and Union only getting a draw. I think it's nothing systematically that went wrong at Hoffenheim. They just make gross errors, and there were a lot of unforced errors, but you could see that. Wie heißt denn nochmal der Knoche mit Vornamen?
Nicht Robin, das ist der andere.
Robin Knoche.
Oh, yeah. Ist es Robin? Yeah.
Yeah. You could see that Robin Knoche was missing in the back three, maybe together with Rani Khedira there, and Geraldo Becker up front, one of the key players of the team. And so altogether, it was a day to forget for Union, and but I'm still pretty sure that they will make it to the Champions League.
Yeah, you're pretty sure. You're still confident.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope so. I think it would be lovely to see Union. Although, of course, Freiburg in the Champions League would also be great. So whatever happens, I think football, Christoph, will be the winner.
Yeah, that's
next
true.
Weekend. Whether Borussia Dortmund will be the winner next weekend of the season is yet to be seen, but they now have full control in the title race. They won 3-0 at Augsburg. Or shall we start with Bayern first? Let's see.
Yeah, Bayern first.
Bayern first, yeah. Okay, but Dortmund have full control in the title race, courtesy of what happened first on Saturday in Munich, and then not far away in Augsburg on Sunday. Let's start in Munich. Bayern against Leipzig. They knew that 2 wins would secure the title, and they started really well. Serge Gnabry, really fine goal. Gnabry, the informed player for Bayern at the moment. 25th minute, nothing really happened. In the first 35 minutes, Bayern looked like they were really in charge. They had 1 or 2 more opportunities, 1 or 2 chances from Leipzig, but nothing really dramatic. And then in the second half, things fell apart. And they fell apart in dramatic fashion because they conceded a goal from their own corner, which is the sort of thing that drives every manager absolutely nuts. At one stage, they had 4 Leipzig players bearing down on Bayern's goal, with just Serge Gnabry trying to defend. And then they gave away 2 penalties to lose 3-1. And now, even though there's still a theoretical chance, it almost feels like the end game has started. Not the end game for this team, but the end game for those above them, as Bayern are bracing themselves for the day of long knives when the supervisory meeting will happen on the 30th of May. But let's stick with the game for a second. Thomas Tuchel, it's as angry as we've seen him so far in his Bayern spell, found a very nice allegory. He said the problem with defending this corner, defending the counter-attack that led to the goal, was that the players didn't adapt to the situation. They didn't understand the danger. And he said there's a big difference if you're crossing the road in Bogenhausen, which is a very leafy part of Munich where he happens to live, or in New York. If you just cross the road without looking, you will get driven, you will get run over. And that's what happened to Bayern, with Musiala and Coman being just a little bit too weak and not reading the danger. And that goal ultimately put Bayern on the path to defeat, because once again, and that was the real worrying thing, they sort of just imploded afterwards. There was nothing. There was no comeback. There was no resilience. There was just, oh no, it's happening again. And for a team that has built this mythology, at least in the last few years, of being always there when it matters and being more confident than anyone else and believing in themselves, their own strength, it was probably the worst way to lose the game. Self-inflicted, and no real signs of anyone fighting against the key defeat of the season, potentially. Quite shocking.
Interestingly, also, Thomas Tuchel said he didn't see it coming. So he didn't see any signs during the training week. So sometimes coaches have developed a kind of sense that probably things are not going on well in a match, but he said they had a fantastic training week. Everybody seemed to prepared. Everybody seemed to be sharp, and it looked like this, as you already said, especially in the first half hours when Bayern was fully in control of the game. But then, part by part, minute by minute, they lost it, and it's surprising, still surprising to see. I don't know how you see it. It's like because this team had fantastic performances in this season, especially in the first half of the season. I think we all remember this a tremendous 6-1 away win at Frankfurt on the very first day of the season, where Bayern looked like as if they would be the runaway champion by Christmas or so. And I think everybody in Munich is still wondering what is wrong with these players, that they couldn't keep the resilience. Everybody seems to have lost form, especially after the World Cup. I have some numbers here that are probably interesting in that context. For example, I mean, that has to do with probably the World Cup and injuries and so on. So Choupo-Moting, who was injured, is injured now for quite a while. In the first half of the season, he scored 7 goals. In the second, 3. Serge Gnabry scored 8. Now he has 6. He is in form, as you said. Leroy Sané scored 5 in the second half, 3. Mané, before his injury, scored 6, and afterwards only 1. And also interesting, Jamal Musiala, who scored 9 goals in the first half of the season, and in the second half only 2. And so it's not single players where digits are going down, but just a group of players. The only a player against the trend is Thomas Müller, who scored 5 in the second half of the season and only 2 in the first half. But apart from this number, do we learn have we learned anything new about this Bayern team on Saturday evening, or is this only was heißt denn Bestätigung? Confirmation.
Yeah.
Or is this, or was it only the confirmation of suspicions about them we already had for quite a while?
Well, I don't think it's either or, Christoph. It does confirm all the problems that we've seen, and we've seen Bayern lose games in this fashion many times this season. But what's new is that every time you think, okay, finally they've turned a corner, and here Bayern are back, as we said last week when they destroyed Schalke, and when I was sure that they will just go on and continue to to win the last couple of games with not much problem, then it doesn't happen. And that's still, if you are familiar with Bayern over the recent years, that is still shocking. Every single time it happens again. And as you said, Thomas Tuchel said, nothing in this week suggested that this kind of performance would happen, because there was a great atmosphere, real focus. And it's the second or third time that Tuchel has said he can't really read this team. For somebody who's been around for a few years, you think you have a handle on when a team performs well and when they don't. And with Bayern, there doesn't seem to be a pattern. You can have bad training sessions and great games, and good training sessions you can have bad training sessions and good games, and good training sessions and bad games. And I found it was quite remarkable to see a coach who is at the very top of his game basically saying, I don't know what's going on here. He was very open. And of course you can say, well, in a way he was basically saying the problems that exist here are kind of so deep that I'm still not in a position to solve them. But I think it is probably the way he really feels about this Bayern team. They are a bit of a mystery. And you see stupid mistakes at the worst times of a game, and the kind of pragmatism and cleverness and smartness that you need at this level, and these players should have it. They have won the Champions League, a lot of them. The stuff that was missing for the Germany team at the World Cup, if you will, you see with the Bayern team as well. And of course, there is an overlap in personnel, but that doesn't explain why. That is just a statement of fact. Why that is, I don't know.
If they would be Borussia Dortmund, we would talk about mentality.
Yeah, we would. And it was interesting because Tuchel was asked about this, and he said, this is not a question of mentality. This is a question of details. If you stop moving in the right way, if you don't follow the plan in the build-up, if people don't show for the ball, if people make the wrong decisions, then little by little become problems, which tells you a lot about his view of football. I think he's quite a technocrat at heart. I think he's become better when it comes to connecting with players, but I think he still sees football in a fairly rational, technical way that can be put together by doing 100 right decisions all over the pitch. But for whatever reason, this Bayern team don't seem to be able to do it. And maybe, as we talked about in the past, Christoph, there is something wrong in the makeup of this team, how they relate to each other on a more psychological level that is very hard to pinpoint, where things are just not quite right.
Yeah, but what you brought up, how Tuchel described the problems, I think you can sum it up as mentality, because mentality in a sense that you take responsibility for the whole team, that you concentrate for 90 minutes, that you see dangers and take care of them, for example, that you know that probably every duel is 100% important, and so on. So everybody was wondering if Borussia Dortmund would show their problems in Augsburg, but they didn't do. I mean, they won 3-0, and in a very convincing way, I must say. Or what would you say? I mean, they had the big advantage of being one player up after 40 minutes, but already then they were in full control of the game. It was 0-0 when Udokai was sent off, but it could have been easily 1 or 2-0 at that times. And afterwards, Borussia Dortmund only had a very brief period where they after they were 1-0 up, where they were having a bit of problems with the physicality of this Augsburg team that came forward and created not big chances, but at least some problems for Borussia Dortmund. But Borussia Dortmund looked very mature and very much like a champion.
They did look like a champion. They played like champions. It could have been the proverbial banana skin game that they haven't won in 3 years at Augsburg, but they were in control. They got the breaks as well. That Udukai sending off, of course, made things a lot easier. Augsburg created 1 or 2 chances, but it seemed to be inevitable that Dortmund were going to score. And it didn't look, a bit of Fußballdeutsch here, verkrampft.
Okay.
Verkrampft means when you are too tight, when you are too nervous, and you're choking from nerves. And we never get that sense with Dortmund. As they have been playing in most of the second half of the season, 1 or 2 bad games where we questioned their mentality a little bit, but they played again with real fluidity. Sebastian Haller scored 2 goals, looked really good again. Julian Brandt had a fantastic game. Daniel Marlin, who won that red card by just being a little bit quicker, and he was fouled, and it was denying of a goal-scoring opportunity that saw the sending off of Urukai. And Dortmund, Dortmund are very, very close. Very, very close now. And now it's interesting because we saw both Terzic and Sebastian Kier saying, oh, hold on a moment, yes, we worked hard for this, but there's 1 more game. Let's focus. No days off. We'll train all week. But at home, Christoph, against a Mainz team that have now lost 4 in a row and look like they've maybe checked out or they're already at the beach, it should really be, I don't want to say a formality, but it would be the mother of all surprises if they don't win it now, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Borussia Dortmund, yes, I think they Borussia Dortmund will win it by 3, 4, 5 goals on a Saturday. I think they will roll over Mainz because this. I think you can't overestimate how important this win at Augsburg is, because it's tough to play in Augsburg. It's a difficult team to beat, especially for the top teams. Leverkusen lost their, Bayern lost their, RB Leipzig played 3-3, and so on. So it's really tough to win there. And this win was another proof of their fantastic, Borussia Dortmund's fantastic turnaround of the season after this long World Cup winter break. Because when you look at the numbers before, in the first half of the season, Borussia scored 31 goals, and in the second half 50. That is 19 more, and we still have 1 game to play. And it's so interesting. Sebastian Haller, who scored 2 goals in Augsburg, and probably is a story of the season, coming back from cancer and now having scored 9 goals for Borussia. Karim Adeyemi had scored 6, and Daniel Malin has scored 9, and all these players have all scored all goals in the second half of the season. So it's like as if they came on with a complete new set of players to the second half of the season. And also Edin Terzic managed to stabilize the defense. In the first part of the season, they got 25 goals against them. Now it's 17. And for me, the key player here is, maybe I'm a bit biased because I know him and I know what a fantastic guy is a Norwegian Julian Ryerson as a left back, who is probably limited in his footballing ability, but he has a heart that is big as the Westfalenstadion. So and I think he was instrumental in giving this Dortmund team an extra that it was probably lacking, but all around, I think maybe we praise him a bit more if they really make the title. But I think Edin Terzic has done a tremendous job, and also with a difficult team and a team that showed some difficulties similar to what we had been talking about at Bayern. But in the second half of the season, they only lost one game in Munich 4-2, and they had only 3 draws. This controversial 1-1 draw in Bochum, where they should have got a penalty. Very unlucky, another draw in the Revier Derby at Schalke, where they were clearly the better team. And then this crazy 3-3 at Stuttgart, where they blew a lead with one player up. So, but yeah, still probably one of the best turnarounds in the history of the Bundesliga when you compare the first half of the season and the second half of the season in the championship race.
Yes, and we will come back with a conclusion of said Champions League race, which might be more dramatic, as Christoph said. He expects a big win for Mainz, but let's see. Thomas Müller still believes, he said. Taking a lead maybe in Köln might put pressure on Dortmund. I'm not sure how convinced I am in that theory, but we've seen strange things happen in football, especially in the Bundesliga. So we'll be back with our final episode of the regular season in the Beer and Honey Podcast on, ich würde vorschlagen, am Sonntag, weil ja alle Spiele am Samstag sind. Geht das bei euch?
Ich bin auf einer Hochzeit eingeladen.
Ja, ich bin auch unterwegs. Außer in der Früh würde es gehen vielleicht. Sonntagmorgen, wenn wir aufnehmen?
Also da muss ich jetzt mal...
Das ist Pfingsten, ne?
I don't know.
Nächste Woche.
Pfingsten gibt es hier nicht.
Ich als guter Katholik kann natürlich nicht arbeiten an Pfingsten.
Nee, ich glaube, das ist nicht Pfingsten.
Doch. Ja, das kann gut sein.
Nee, das Ding ist nur, ich bin in der Datsche natürlich über das lange Pfingstwochenende. Manchmal habe ich da auch LTE, aber ich habe da kein Internet. Also ich könnte dann wahrscheinlich nicht dem Zoom-Call beiwohnen, aber wenn ihr mir die Dateien dann einfach schickt.
Ja, ich würde vorschlagen, Christoph, lass uns doch Sonntagmorgen das aufnehmen.
Genau, ich muss jetzt mal gucken, wir gucken das mal in die Richtung irgendwie und dann schauen wir, ob das geht.
Okay, dann lasse ich das jetzt noch offen. Well, we'll be back with our big review of the final match day of the season, which promises to be exciting. Certainly at the bottom, still all to play for 3 teams, maybe even 4. And yeah, do tune in to find out what happens in this crazy Bundesliga season of ours. Well, that's all we got time for. Thank you very much. I was Raphael Honigstein.
I was Christoph Biermann, and we say bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Kurzes Intro.
Wollen wir das Zahlungsziel kommunizieren oder nur auf der Seite?
Ja, das macht ja nur...
Na, wenn, müssen wir es auch hier sagen.
Ja, klar.
Sonst
Lass
halt
es doch am
nächste
letzten
Woche zum
Spieltag.
Abschluss.
Lass es doch am letzten Spieltag machen.
Ja.
Dann kann ich mir noch mal ein bisschen das Wording überlegen.
Okay.
All right. Beer and Honey, the German football pod. Today, Dortmund take control of the title race as they sweep aside bogey team Augsburg, while in Munich, Thomas Tuchel is at a loss to explain another strange defeat as Bayern go down 3-1 at home to Leipzig. Also going down, Hertha after 1-1 draw. Also going down, Hertha after a 1-1 draw with Bochum. But who else will drop to Bundesliga 2 with them? Stay tuned for this week's edition of the Beer and Honey podcast to find out. Hello, dear listener, and welcome to another edition of Beer and Honey, match day 33, and all sorts of stuff happening at both ends of the pitch. With me here to discuss everything is
Christoph Biermann.
And I'm, of course, Raphael Honigstein. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you, thank you for tuning in. Also, thank you for supporting us. By being a member, you help us keep this lovely little pod on the road. You can also become an ultra and get a mug, a special Beer and Honey mug, as a token of your as a token of our appreciation. If you take out a season ticket, thank you very much. We do need your support. We value it very much. Please, if you haven't already signed up to be a member of the Supporters Club, consider doing so. It really makes a massive difference to us. But let's get going because there's lots to cover in this crazy match day 33.